This is the watercolor painting that the watercolor artist and teacher and YouTube star Nicola created for us. And my thought in doing this was that the history of this region is so amazing that you'd have to write 6 pages of words. And I've been told by my children that nobody wants to read anything anymore. So I thought, well, let's just do something artistic and beautiful that tells the story. So fortunately, Nicola lives here in this tiny little village, and she was able to paint this. And I'd like to go through it and explain a couple of things, and then you can see it on our website where you can expand it and see some of the details she painted in a little closer than you'll be able to here. So we start out with the Cathar castles down here, and the Cathars were a group of people who were religious innovators because they believed in the equality of men and women, and lived a simple life, kind of like the Amish in America. And they were all slaughtered by Pope Innocent XIII. It was the only crusade that happened within Europe, and they slaughtered all of them. And so the testament to their culture is here in the map, and these are absolutely amazing castles that they built as they retreated and tried to preserve their culture before they were all exterminated. So the Cathar castles are here. Down here closer is Collioure, which is in the Roussillon region, which doesn't get as much attention as the Languedoc. It's not as big and the wines aren't as well known, but we're hoping to change that. And Collioure is an artist colony, and very, very beautiful. It's right on the Mediterranean, has a beautiful harbor, and they have some really excellent wines there. And then there's Perpignan, and of course this whole area down here, it has a culture that's very much more closely aligned with that of Spain and Catalan than it is with Paris. So in this region, the symbol that Nicola chose for Perpignan is a bull, and there are lots of bullfights down here, and there's a big Spanish influence. You see paella in all the markets and lots of Spanish meats. And the grapes that are grown are very similar to the ones that are grown in northern Spain. Then to the west of the Cathar castles is Limoux. And most Americans don't know that Limoux is the place where Champagne was actually developed, long before Dom Pérignon took it to the Champagne, the town of Champagne near Paris. And they have co-opted the elegant name and the method, really, through their marketing, which is great. But the original sparkling wine came from Limoux, the monastery of Saint Hilaire, which is in the Limoux area. And in Limoux, they make absolutely amazing wines. The Crémant, which is made from primarily Chardonnay grape. And then there is a Blanquette, which is made from Mozac, which is a grape that is indigenous to this area. It's the grape that's been growing here a long time. And if you're going to make a Blanquette de Limoux, it has to have Mozac grape in it. So Nicola has put little bear tracks here. That's probably the bear looking for the princess. And then up here is Carcassonne. And Carcassonne is not just a castle, it's a city. It's an amazing place. It's quite touristy now, but it's an absolutely beautiful place to visit. And just up here is the wine region Cabardès, and we have some wines from a domain there called the Domaine de Cabrol, and it's on the edge here between the continental climate going up to Bordeaux and the grapes there, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, and the Mediterranean area. So the dividing line is kind of right here. And then up above you have Toulouse, and by the time you get to Toulouse, there aren't any vineyards anymore. It's other agricultural crops by the time you get that far up to the Atlantic. Nicolas put the Tramontane in here, and it's the wind that blows that's funneled between the Massif Central in the center of France and the Pyrenees Mountains, which are down here. And this wind is actually quite important because it allows all the organic production in the Languedoc to be much easier. The wind is a cool, drying wind, and it keeps the leaves dry and keeps insects from being able to nest, and also mold from forming. Some years there is mold, but in general that wind is super important. So we thought it was important to include that. Then as we come along here, this is the very important Roman port town of Narbonne, and there are some very important wine growing regions around there. La Clappe is one of them. And one of my favorite places in the whole Languedoc is the amphora factory. It's the Musée Amphoralis, which is in Salles d'Aude, and it's the place where the Romans manufactured the amphora and shipped wine from the Languedoc all over the Roman Empire. And they know that because the amphora have a stamp on them, and they found them all in the Mediterranean, over in the Middle East, every place where the Roman Empire was. They have found those amphora with the little stamp, and they came from right here. It's an amazing museum. They excavated, and the museum is built over the old kilns where they had a factory. It wasn't just a kiln, they had a factory and a whole village there of people making amphoras. So one of our wine clubs is called the Amphora Collection, paying homage to what took place here and the Roman viticulture that has been in this area for thousands of years. One of the other wine clubs is the Cathar Collection, paying tribute to the bravery and the independent-mindedness and the progressive thinking of the Cathars. So next is Saint-Chinian, and now another thing about the Languedoc is you have grapes and climate that's down here on the Mediterranean, and then you start to go up in the mountains, and along this ridge you're in altitude, and so the grapes are different and the flavors of the wine are different, and the orientation to the sun, everything changes when you start to get up in the mountains and the valleys, which is one of the reasons we have the amazing diversity of wines that we do here. You can have 6 wines and they all have exactly the same blend of grapes, and they all taste entirely different because the soil types are so varied, and the orientation to the sun and the altitude and the other things that make winemaking so interesting. So you have Saint-Chinian here, and beautiful sub-appellations up there. Berlou is up there, and continuing up to Fougères, which is a very special winemaking area because of the soil. They have schist soil up there. Berlou does too, as does Roquebrune, another sub-appellation. They have schist, and it really makes a difference in the grapes because the grapes have to struggle to find some water, and also the schist holds heat, and so it affects the vines in the evening. And all the soil types have their own particularities, but the schist is really considered very, very special. So then down you have Béziers, and Pézenas is here, and there are really fine wines coming from this region as well. And then you come over to Montpellier, which is the first medical school in Europe, was founded there, so it's a very, very old city. And they've been growing grapes there and studying grapes and viticulture for centuries in the area around Montpellier. And then along the Mediterranean coast, you have Sète. And of course, the grape varieties, the white grape varieties, are all delicious with the seafood that comes from the Mediterranean. And the most delicious oysters I've ever had come from the Mediterranean, from Sète. And Bouzigues is the name of a town and a type of oyster. And the Picpoul and the other whites, the Vermentinos and the other whites that come from this region along here are, of course, delicious with the seafood from the same region. Then up above Montpellier is Saint-Guillaume-le-Désert, which is a really, really beautiful old village. And they have some beautiful terroir up there. There's altitude again, and one of our wineries, La Voûte de Verdú, comes from that region, and the wines from up there are really, really delicious, and it's a beautiful village to visit as well. And then coming over in this direction, you get close to Nîmes, which of course has the really famous Roman aqueduct that's so beautiful, and that's really on the edge of the Languedoc there. You're at the edge here, just past Nîmes, and up into Uzès, which is in the Lodève. And Uzès is another amazing town with lots of history, beautiful, beautiful old church center, and it has an old medieval center of town, which is amazing to visit too. And this is getting up into the reaches, the top reaches of the Languedoc here. So we thought by presenting it in a map, it would give you a way to understand the richness of the history, not just of the vines, but human beings have lived in this region forever. This town of Set was settled by Greeks. The Phoenicians came to this region. This Opidum on Surin here, this was inhabited by the Greeks, the Celts, the Romans, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. So we were just hoping to present this map as a way to understand the beauty and interest of the region. Enjoy.